Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're looking this time to Psalm 100, a call to worship. Now, I've noted previously that Psalm 93 all the way to 100, I titled them Enthronement Psalms. Back in Psalm 93, we saw that the Lord reigns, his throne is lifted up despite the floods. Remember, we talked about the floods and the rivers, and in times of trouble, we described that. Psalm 94 was the God of vengeance is my stronghold and will turn things around. He'll make things okay. Psalm 95, worship the Lord because he is a great God and a great king. And remember, there was those warning passages to enter into his rest. Psalm 96, sing to the Lord and ascribe praise because he is coming to judge. Remember, sing to the Lord a new song in 96. 97, the Lord reigns over all the earth. Be glad and give thanks. Psalm 98, again, sing a new song to the Lord. We actually had that in 96 and 98. With all creation, as the Lord comes to judge. Notice that judgment theme in quite a number of these. Psalm 99, the Lord is enthroned above the cherubim, and a call to exalt him. And now we come to Psalm 100, come before the Lord with gladness because he is good. And actually, Psalm 100 is the first of these that really doesn't speak specifically in those words of God reigning upon a throne. So is this still an enthronement psalm? I think it is. And the reason why is because Psalm 100 is going to be made up of bits and pieces of all of these other psalms from Psalm 93 to 99. Look at that, Psalm 100 and verse 1. We're going to go through it and compare it, and then we'll go through it individually. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. In Psalm 95, verse 1, let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. But even closer, Psalm 98, verse 4, shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. That's word for word. In Psalm 100 and verse 2, serve the Lord with gladness. In Psalm 97:11, and gladness for the upright in heart. In Psalm 100 and verse 3, know that the Lord himself is God. In Psalm 95 and verse 7, a number of these are from Psalm 95, for he is our God. In latter part of verse 3, it is he who has made us and not we ourselves. That's in Psalm 100 and verse 3. In Psalm 95 and verse 6, let us kneel before the Lord our maker. Notice he has made us and he is our maker. In Psalm 100 and verse 3, at the end of that verse, we are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Notice 95 and verse 7, we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. It says it in slightly opposite order, but it's really almost the same verse. In Psalm 100 and verse 4, enter his gates with thanksgiving. We have in chapter 25 and verse 2, let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. The gates weren't specifically mentioned, but still close enough. In Psalm 104, and his courts with praise. In Psalm 96 and verse 8, bring an offering and come into his courts. In Psalm 104, give thanks to him, bless his name. In Psalm 96:2, sing to the Lord, bless his name. Notice the blessing of the name. That's not found in all of the Psalms, but it's found in these ones leading up to this. And finally, Psalm 100 and verse 5, the psalm, it's only 5 verses long. For the Lord is good, his loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness to all generations. Notice the references to loving kindness and faithfulness. In Psalm 98 and verse 3, he has remembered his loving kindness and his faithfulness to the house of Israel. So I'm suggesting that Psalm 100, you know how you have a football team and they play throughout the year, but then you have the best players and they call them the all-star team. Well, this is the all-star psalm. The best of all of the ones leading up to this are taken and put into this psalm. So let's begin. Notice the superscription, a psalm for Thanksgiving. We haven't had that many superscriptions, but here's one. And this has actually led a number of people to say, wait a minute, is this really a psalm of Thanksgiving? Well, Thanksgiving will be given here. Is it a Thanksgiving psalm? Maybe not, but there will be Thanksgiving. And I've noted before that the superscriptions are in the oldest copies of the text that we have. I'm not saying definitively that they are original because I don't know that for sure. But when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, remember the Dead Sea Scrolls were the oldest Hebrew manuscripts that we'd found. Prior to that, the most full manuscript that we had was the Leningrad Codex, dating to 1005 A.D. And with the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we went more than 1,000 years earlier. And when they looked at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the superscriptions were there. So now I have to admit that here's a caveat, that when we look at the Septuagint, there is once in a while, it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, you'll see this, like a different superscription. Is that the fault of the superscription? Is that the fault of the Septuagint? I don't know. But I'm treating them, whether I should or not, I'm treating them as if they are authoritative. So a psalm for thanksgiving, I think, works. And now the psalm begins. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Notice shouting, serving him. Think about this. When we're worshiping him, when we're worshiping the Lord, we're also serving him. When we're serving him, we're also worshiping him. Notice, with gladness, come before him with joyful singing. Know that the Lord himself is God. Now, the Lord, that's his name. Remember, that's the divine name. We say Lord instead of pronouncing the name. And that's okay. That was a practice that we saw all the way back in the Septuagint and also in the New Testament. That you actually never have the Hebrew name of God stated specifically in the New Testament. When it's quoting a passage like this that has the divine name, the New Testament writers would follow the habit pattern of the Septuagint, and they would place it with the Greek word for Lord. So our English translators have done the same thing. But notice the Lord himself, that's his name. He is God, not those other gods. It is he who has made us, and notice you want to know this. It is he who has made us, not we ourselves. There's no such thing as a self-made man. Nobody made themselves. God made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. I said that we don't have a very clear distinction that this is an enthronement psalm, that this is showing God as king, although I think this line does. When we talk about being his people and the sheep of his pasture, that's the sort of thing that a king would say about his country. We have examples of the Pharaoh talking about himself as the shepherd of Egypt, the shepherd of his people. And God is the same thing. Now, have you noticed what we've had so far? We had worship starting in verses 1 and 2. That was all worship. And then starting in verse 3, that's still sort of worship, but notice the emphasis here is on what you know. It's important that you know who God is, that he is your creator, and who you are, that you're his people, the sheep of his pasture. And so notice there's worship and what you know, worship and knowledge. Move next to verse 4, enter his gates with thanksgiving. That's worship again. So we had worship, knowledge, back to worship. So enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Now, his gates and his courts, that reminds me of something. Where does God have gates? Where does God have courts? That's temple language. And so the psalm is taking us to the temple. Perhaps as we looked at the enthronement psalm, Psalm 93 through 99, we've been on our way to the temple, but now we're there. We finally arrived. The place of thanksgiving, the place to bring our thanksgiving, the place to bring our praise. And notice we enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. Because that's what happens at the temple. That's what happens in worship. We give thanks, we praise him, we bless his name. I say bless his name, we speak well of him. We talk about his worthiness. We talk about his holiness, his kabod, that he's worth it all. Verse 5, for the Lord is good. Now notice, we were giving worship, but now as we turn to describing who and what the Lord is, we're back to what we know. For the Lord is good, his loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness to all generations. And that's the whole psalm. But notice in verse 5, loving kindness and faithfulness, notice the loving kindness is everlasting, his faithfulness to all generations. When we talk about loving kindness being everlasting, we're talking about the extent of his loving kindness, that it has no beginning, it has no end, it continues forever. And then his faithfulness to all generations is the extent to whom it is given, that it goes to all sorts of, not just all time, but all people. His faithfulness to all generations, of course, is talking about all of his people that receive it. Now, the same idea is given by Jesus when he was speaking to the woman by the well. Do you remember the story, John chapter 4? And they come to verse 22. They've been talking, Jesus and the woman, and she'd come to get water, and Jesus speaks to her and talks about living water. But then, as the conversation moves on, he says, "You worship," and that is, you all worship, is plural. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. So notice there's a knowledge there. We worship what we know because God had given. He had spoken first to the Jewish people. Doesn't have to say there. In fact, the Jewish people were supposed to extend that to all the world. There's a sense in which we see the Jewish people that were followers of Jesus were commissioned to do that, to extend it not just to Jewish people, but even to nasty old Gentiles as well. Verse 23, but an hour is coming, and now is when the true worshipers, that is, those who worship who have the knowledge, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. You see, that's worship. That's the same categories that we had: the worship and the knowledge. For such people, the ones that worship with worship, but also with knowledge, for such people, the Father seeks to be his worshipers. Yes, worship the Lord in truth. That's the knowledge part, but also in spirit. That's the true worshiping part. Not just head knowledge, but with a heart of worship.